What's up, everybody? I'm Jason. Welcome back to the channel. I apologize. This week and next week are going to be a little bit rough and ready in this kind of style, not the usual super polished videos that I normally would want to put up or normally try to put up. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about the channel, what's going on, what to expect going forward. Next week we're going to talk a little bit about the Alaskan cruise that I went on and the gear I took and just some general thoughts and comments on that. Neither of these were planned videos. I was planning to roll right out of the trip, right back to work and start working on putting up my fundamentals of video type videos. So I was going to look at how color is represented. I was going to look at log curves, raw video, image quality, etc. The short of it is that just at the end of the cruise, I got a cold. I did not get the stuff done that I was expecting to get done, and I was not really in great shape when I came home to want to spend a lot of time and effort working on churning out new content in the normal fashion. So I need a couple filler videos is basically what it comes down to. Not that these are filler videos in the sense that they're just crap that, you know, isn't worth relevant or talking about, but they are not the usual content. So in this video, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about where the channel's going for the rest of the year and the foreseeable future. Obviously, Canon has just announced the C400 on the cinema camera line. They have pre-announced that they're announcing a R1 in the coming months, and we pretty much all expect Canon to announce an R5 Mark II in, I think Canon Rumors is saying it's going to be announced in July or June or sometime in the next couple of months. Obviously, new cameras are going to be something that we will be talking about. I am looking for an upgrade, but I'll get to that in a second. In any event, I will be continuing the R5 and the R5C series until their inevitable conclusion, when I think I've covered everything that there is to cover on the camera. Part of that really comes down to the fact that we are talking about a camera platform as a whole, and anything that is not specifically performance related to the R5 and the R5C is going to have full carryover to the R5 Mark II, the R1, etc. And this has been a running problem that I've had since I've started that series and started looking at it and trying to figure out where to go, because eventually that cash cow, or however you want to look at it, that line of reasoning is going to run out. Canon, Nikon, Sony, any camera company, every new camera doesn't introduce a completely new feature set that completely gets rid of everything that the previous cameras did. And so really, like, a lot of the content that I have in the R5 series actually applies to even cameras like the 5D Mark IV or 5D Mark III. Maybe a bit less so than in, you know, the older you go, but it certainly applies to other cameras. It applies to the R7, the R3. You know, the applications are all over the place, because by and large, every camera Canon makes has almost all of the same functions, and when they release something new, they only add a few new functions to it that are something worth, you know, that you'd have to talk about in addition to that. So I'm going to be continuing that going forward, just like I said, until I feel that I have covered everything that I need to cover on knowing how to use those cameras. Now, of course, if I get an R5 Mark II or an R1, I will start up new production on what those cameras add to the overall capabilities discussion. So that will be kind of its own new series. I also said I am trying, I promised back at the beginning of the year, I have been desperately trying to get into it, and I apologize for not being able to do this sooner or faster. a look into video formats, encodings, all of that kind of stuff. So like I said, color encodings, what's RGB, what's YUV, or chroma luma, or luma chroma chroma, or any of the number of ways that that gets expressed. Talk about log curves, what they do, how they work, how the image quality is affected, which log curves you should choose for what purposes and when and where and how. Because it really is not just a case of C log 2 is gooder, use C log 2. It really doesn't work that way. That's not how log curves actually work. And of course, RAW, it's its own cup of tea. It's its own thing that really, has to be dug into. Unfortunately, this whole project has proven a lot harder for me to really get started on digging in. And a lot of that has to come down to, it comes down to a couple of things. First of all is scope. This is big. The talking about even color encodings is a video or 3 in and of itself. And that's just to get the familiarity to understand like what is actually going on and how do things transform. And now I know you might be thinking, well, why do I need to know this? And part of it comes down to, some of it is you don't technically need to know all of it. Some of it comes down to this is just how I approach things. And some of it comes down to the better you understand the fundamentals of how the stuff works, the better you can make decisions about what you're doing on your camera. There is, for example, a very real reason to perhaps not want to shoot in Canon Cinema Gamut and instead shoot in BT 2020 or Rec 709, depending on the situations you're working in, and the camera you're using, and a whole lot of other factors. So this is complicated. It's large in scope, and I'm just struggling to figure out the best way to approach this. And I'm trying to just dive in and do something and figure it out necessarily as I go. But it is not the easiest topic to broach in a concise YouTube-y style manner. Part of the other problem is that I have no idea where I should really start. So what level of understanding is core to or useful to the audience, or what level of understanding is below my audience? Because my audience, everybody says when it comes to content and whatnot, do what, match your audience. And the problem with that is I have an audience that, as best as I can tell, covers everything from I just got my first camera to, in some cases, I'm a professional cinematographer who's been doing this for ages and ages, and this is the first time that I've had somebody who's going into any real detail about the technical stuff that I've been trying to learn, but I don't really understand fully. And, but I'm not like, I know what an aperture is. It's kind of like I run the whole gamut. So trying to not go completely over everybody's head while also not trying to like talk down to everybody or anybody, it's a hard balancing act when you start getting into this more engineering side of things. It's a lot more technical and complicated. That said, I am making some progress on the first parts of that, so that will be happening. I have not given up. I'm not like throwing the towel in on that. That will be coming at some point, hopefully in the next couple of months. Also, I will be publishing for the next many weeks a second video, and if you've seen this as around when I post it, which will be the third week, I think, of June, last week, I published a video talking about breathing, the effect that you have when you focus when shooting video, and the angle of view changes, and it's the last video was, or the first video, last week's video, was very much a case of, like, we might be doing the testing wrong, and we might be talking about it wrong, because while I'm not saying that it's not a factor and it's not something that we have to consider, it is something that I never looked into deep enough until recently to really appreciate more of the nuance of it. That said, for that video, I did a whole bunch of tests, and I have several more lenses that I would like to test before everything's said and done. And what I've decided to do is that I'm going to be publishing each of those tests as an individual video. They're going to probably, my goal is to have them come out on Thursdays. They're about 5 to 7 minutes a piece, looking specifically at breathing and talking specifically about the application of that lens and the impact that breathing has on that lens as a function. So far, I have tested Canon's RF 15 to 35 f2.8L IS USM, the RF 24 to 70 f2.8L IS USM, the RF 28 to 70 f2.8L USM, and the 50 f1.8 STM, the EF version, and an old FD mount 50 f1.8, which ended up being sort of an illustration point on the discussion of the problem of talking about breathing or looking at breathing the way we've kind of historically done it. Those videos are already shot, they're already edited, they're already uploaded, they're already ready to publish, and they will likely start, or they are now going to start this Thursday, and they're going to be published on Thursday at noon until I run out of it. Now, in the process, as I said, those are been tested and finished. I also have the data done for Canon's EF 16 to 35 f4L IS USM, the EF 24 to 105 f4L IS USM. This is the original one, not the Mark II. That's the newer, probably more well-known or purchased or whatever. And the EF 40 millimeter f2.8 STM. That's already done. I just have to put the videos together. Those will get published as I had the chance to do them. To test, I have a handful more lenses that I'm going to look at. These include the RF 100 to 500 f4.5 to 7.1 LIS USM, and the RF 24 to 105 f4L IS USM, as well as two EF lenses and an EF-S lens, although I'm not sure how relevant any of these are, except they are still out there, they're still available used, and people still use them. But I will be looking at the EF 100 to 400 f4.5 to 5.6 LIS USM2, so the later 100, the newest EF 100 to 400, and the 70 to 200 f4L IS USM. This will be the early 70 to 200 f4 that is image stabilized, not the one that they released just before or prior to ending the system. And for the EF-S lenses, I'm going to be looking at the 10 to 22, which probably at this point isn't really relevant, but I thought since I've got it, I've got one knocking around, I might as well look at that as well. Now, I would like to expand these tests to look at some other gear. Specifically, I have a friend with a Nikon Z9 and a bunch of Z mount or whatever. Bunch of Nikon glass. If I can work something out to meet up with him at some point, I would like to run through the battery of tests with those lenses. They're not terribly long, so I should be able to work something out with that. But it would give a little bit more breadth to that thing, to that series. Now, like I said, these are going to be, they're short. They're about 5 minutes long, 7 minutes long at the longest. Largely focused purely on breathing. They are not lens reviews on their own, and my intent really isn't to replace content on the channel with them. It was, I needed to do the tests, and I thought they were useful considering that most people don't actually have the information in a way that makes, well, if you've watched the introduction to breathing video, you'll understand the problem, and if not, you should go watch it. I'll put a link in the description. Now, that said, the last thing I want to touch on in this update is the future of the R5 Mark II and what I'm planning to go with the channel and what on with that. I said I would touch on that at the beginning of the video. The short of it is right now I'm not sure where I'm going for my next upgrade. I'm not planning on leaving Canon. I may very well upgrade to an R5 Mark II. I may very well look at making the jump to an R1 if I can figure out how to swing that, depending on what the feature set is. A lot of this for me is coming down to resolution. My R5 at 45 megapixels is really not what I'm thrilled with. I certainly am not interested in anything any higher resolution than 45 megapixels in the R5. So that's a big kind of sticking point if for some reason Canon decided to up the resolution on the R5 Mark II. I'm not sure how thrilled I am with that. A lot of this comes down to the reality is that the higher resolution these cameras are getting, the more demanding they are on me as an end user, the more demanding they are on the lenses, the more demanding they are on technique, and really the more demanding they are becoming on the environment. I have shot more things with my R5 at 45 megapixels where atmospheric distortion and diffraction and so forth have become issues that wouldn't have or hadn't been issues with, say, my 5D Mark IV at 30 megapixels in the past. Now, if you need more or want more resolution or you're a studio photographer, like, I'm not saying that this is wrong to want more, but I am saying that I have reached a point where the diminishing returns of higher resolution cameras are starting to be massive or be overwhelmed by the increased challenges that come with them. Now, that said, I am almost certainly going to be upgrading something camera-wise at the end of this year when Canon announces stuff. Like I said, whether it is moving to an R5 Mark II, I'm still thinking that's the most likely choice or route, or upgrading to an R1 or whatnot. But that will prompt a new discussion. And I really probably should just do a video talking about that whole thought process when the time comes, and cameras and resolution and all of that stuff in general. So there will be a new series when I upgrade, looking at the stuff in the new cameras. But like I said, expect that this is all going to overlap with what's currently running. So I am not going to start all the way back at the start of everything. If, say, I upgrade to an R1 and or even an R5 Mark II, I am not going to go back to, like, how do you move the autofocus points, because unless they change things radically, that's probably going to be the same as how you deal with it on the R5. Well, at least for an R5 Mark II. For an R1, there is definitely, or there's more than likely going to be some new controls to deal with. In any event, one of my biggest struggles with that whole process is trying to organize and make this clear for people. I'm not going to repeat myself just because Canon releases a new camera, even though maybe I should. Some of those early R5 videos are not the best product that I have produced. So I will figure something out, but that's where I'm planning to go for the rest of this year. Now, if that sounds like it might be interesting to you, hit that subscribe button. If you would like to support this channel and that content that I'm talking about, or have been a subscriber and have watched this content and have found it useful, please consider supporting this channel directly by hitting that thanks button if you can. Of course, not everybody can do that. So if you are buying yourself something you've always wanted from one of our affiliates, please consider using that affiliate link to buy yourself that thing you've always wanted. We do get a small commission, for lack of a better word, from that. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the future. I'll see you next time.